Alrighty, folks, we are back with the CEO of Rentometer. We are going to talk rentals, we're going to talk assets, and we're going to figure out what drives rent. But before we get into the conversation, Mike, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you again.
I'm doing great, thank you. It was thanks for having me. It was nice to meet you out in Las Vegas.
Yeah, you were at Bigger Pockets. I know you've been to a couple of events over the last month or so, but it was nice to catch up with you in Bigger Pockets, or BP Con as they call it. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for introducing yourself. So let's talk rentals and more specifically rents. We got a report today that single family homes have seen the smallest increase in rents in the last 15 years. Nationally speaking, only up 1.7%. Same report talked about apartment rents actually falling down 0.8% year on year. So I was curious, Mike, when you look at the United States, where are rents the strongest, the weakest? What are you seeing kind of in the data at that level?
Well, I don't have the up to the minute data, but the data that the trends that you're talking about have been what we have seen all along. I was at an IMN conference in August, I believe, and it was all single family large operators. And they were talking about retention for the first time ever. And retention's critical. Yeah, retention. And I haven't attended all their conferences. I'm quoting someone who said, we've never had to think about retention because if you had turnover, you'd replace it with somebody who's going with 10% rent increase.
Yeah.
Now you're getting 2 or 3% rent increase, which is exactly what we've seen. And we've seen that trend, that slowing of rents in almost, I mean, every market, it's slowing. Adjusted for inflation, it's actually probably negative in a lot of markets.
I'd agree for sure. Yeah.
So so rents have been slowing. So it's not news to me that number came out today, that it's the lowest in 15 years. And I see that trend. I wonder what it would be, how bad it would be if the shortage of single family homes wasn't so bad on the buy side, right?
Right.
I remember back when I was doing institutional, selling into the institutional end of the apartment market, you couldn't rent an apartment because it was cheaper to buy a house in those days. So
believe me, I remember. As an apartment owner at that time, I remember it was bad.
Yes, it was really bad. And so these things go in cycles, and anybody that says it's different this time or it's not going to be the same is wrong. It's just what is it? History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, right? Exactly. And the rhyming is happening, and you never see it. You never know how it's going to happen. Everything goes along linearly. I heard a historian say this once. Everything goes along linearly until it doesn't. And it hits, there's a curve in the road. Yeah. And nobody saw the curve in the road. And so it's happening incrementally. And I see, it could just go on like this for a while longer, but it could also, because again, you probably know this, things happen on the margin. Psychological decisions are made on the margin. If you can't sell the last 5%, if you're in that 5% trying to sell, it's 100% they can't sell, right?
Correct.
So all of a sudden it fuels this psychological change in the market. So anyways, so I'm not surprised by the number. I think it's a trend that it's been happening. I think it's been talked about, like I said, at the IMN conference specifically. Large operators are not getting their 10% increases, and the owner manager guys are having hard conversations because the owner's like, well, they're getting $3,000 for that unit. You're telling me it's 26. And it's like, well, that was 3 years ago. That was rented 3 years ago. We're renting today. So
yeah, it's really interesting when you hear about retention, because you're absolutely right. I own a number of single family homes, and all parts of the country go through it in different cycles. So like I have a buddy who invests in Connecticut, or New Hampshire, and he's kind of seeing it right now. And some of that's, time of year, right? Because it's getting cold in the Northeast, and he's having more evictions and turnover right now. But it's funny, in Fresno, I had that happen like 16 months ago. So last summer, it was kind of our wave of having, a number of evictions and some turnover. Now the market is much on firmer footing. So it's funny to watch, or at least it's interesting to watch different operators, because I think a lot of people got spoiled, and maybe it's the large operators. They got spoiled, right? They were like, "Oh, you're gonna leave? No problem. Get out, and I'll raise the rents 10%." I've owned apartments for 20 years, and usually it's flat to plus 2% or something. I think a lot of people got spoiled and frankly lazy, and got used to 10%, and now they're having to work.
Yep. On both sides of the equation, right? On the apartment side also, the apartment side fixes itself faster though, because what happens on the apartment side, which is really funny, is you can put 400 units in the ground like much quicker than you can put 400 single family homes for rental, right? So everybody's looking at a market, they're like, oh, look at the rents escalating there. And it's okay. There's a surplus, there's an absorption, it can maybe handle 1,000 units, right?
Right.
So, but 10 guys get the same idea and say, we're putting 400 units in. So 4,000 units come up out of the ground, and guess what?
Yeah.
Now it's going the other way.
Yeah.
So,
so what I'm seeing in the numbers, and from all the people I talk to, is kind of the Sun Belt, kind of Texas, Florida, Arizona, Vegas, really, really soft right now. A lot of that is because it's easier to build in those areas. And, there was a lot of building that initiated that's actually landing right now. But again, I've been doing this long enough to know that there's not a lot of new building going on. So all of this excess inventory, move-in specials, 2 months rent, $99 deposits, all of those will be gone in 6 to 12 months. And then, Mike, we've got nothing behind it, right? There's no inventory for years to come because, nobody's starting any builds right now. They're just finishing what they have and holding on as tight as they can.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's pretty
and like I said, markets change. And one of the things that I didn't hear a lot of at the Bigger Pockets conference, that was a great conference. The information value, meeting people, talking to you, phenomenal. The one thing I didn't hear was demographics.
Right.
And to me, demographics are the wild card out there. People have talked about it. They've said, well, there's this aging baby boomer crowd that's going to flood the market with SFRs or single family homes. And it hasn't materialized. And I think, 6% interest rates can put a real damper on making a move if you don't have to, right?
Exactly.
Because I have to go somewhere. The prices are outrageous. There's no inventory, and I get the pleasure of paying 6% on top of it. So I think the demographics are sitting out there because I just use my own neighborhood. Half the neighborhood has been there for 25 years or longer.
Yeah.
And those people, a lot of them are in their 70s, and you can only, at some point you just say, I'm getting out. I don't care about the economics of it. I just don't want this house anymore. So I think there's some demographic factor that is going to come into play, and it could be the wild card that changes the equation.
No, there's no question. If, as they say in sports, father time is undefeated. We all leave this place. There's only one exit. So again, we're all going to go that direction. And demographics are important, but also I think, people sometimes overemphasize on it, because the one thing about baby boomers is they don't all expire on the same day, right? There's this notion of the silver tsunami, and it's just going to come and just crush us. And that's just not how it works.
Right.
And, so again, we're aging in place, and, 40% of stuff is free and clear. It is certainly something to pay attention to. It eventually will be a problem, but I think a lot of people are trying to make it more urgent in short term, and it's probably more like midterm and long term.
Right. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but I am technically a baby boomer.
Oh my goodness, you're on the young side of a baby boomer, I'm sure. That's funny.
I'm on the very end of the baby boomer.
Nice. I enjoy being in the middle of the Gen X myself. So one of the things I think we need to realize is going on right now is I think there's about to be a lot more accidental landlords. I'll define an accidental landlord as somebody who bought a home to live in, and now it's time to move for whatever reason, job, family, whatever. And I think a lot of those people are looking at their mortgage statement going, oh my God, I have a 2% mortgage. It doesn't cost me very much. Maybe I should turn it into a rental, right? It wasn't the original plan, but it is the plan now, hence the term accidental landlord. But one of the things I don't think that a lot of accidental landlords understand is what drives rents, right? Number of bedrooms, bathrooms, parking is always what I've talked about. But this is really your area of expertise. What's the data say? You know, maybe what's an extra bed, like a bathroom worth, and things like that nature. What do you got, Mike?
So there's a couple things that come into play. One is we were at a property management conference, the RPM conference, and a lot of our customers are there, a lot of prospective customers. And so we're just talking, using the product and stuff. And the number one filter that we have that most people have a problem with is our bathroom filter. Because we use we set it so you can use any, you can use one only, or you can use 1.5 plus.
Okay.
And it's confusing because, like, you know, all the other major sites you go, it's like 1 bath, 1.5. You can pick what you want.
Yeah, right.
The reason we do it that way, there's 2 reasons. One is if you parse your data too much, then you get a small sample, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
If you give me a 2-bedroom, all the 2-bedroom, 2.5 baths, it's like, okay, that's going to be a small sample.
Right.
But the second factor, we didn't just do that and say, oh, we're just doing it because of that. We looked at it and we studied it. The most important factor is if you have one only or more than one. So that's why we use the one.
Got
So
it.
it doesn't matter if it's 2 versus 2.5. The rent difference isn't going to be that much. And 1.5 to 2 is very confusing because some people have a half bath and they say I have 2 bathrooms, right? So they misclassify it anyways. So we just say, does it have 1 bath only, which is the real demarcation point.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I was having dinner with a friend. This was back in July, and we were taught. He has a condo in a fairly expensive area of Boston,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an oversized unit. And the reason I thought of it is because he's an accident. He's not accidental. He bought it. He thought his family would use it. His family doesn't want to use it. He's like, I'm not going to let it sit there. So he had daughters that went to college in Boston and stuff like that. So he did get some use, but anyways, didn't want to sell it. So he's renting it. It's an oversized, it's a 2-bedroom that has like a full study. So 3 people rent it and they use that study as a bathroom. So he's renting it as a 3-1.
Right. So a bedroom. The third is a bedroom, not a bathroom. It's a bedroom.
The third is a bedroom. So it's a 3-bed, 1 bath. And I said to him,
got it.
He told me the rent that he was getting. I think he said he was getting like 4,800.
Okay.
And I said, okay. I said, I bet you would get more if you rented it as a 2-2. He's like, no, 3. Everybody wants 3 beds. I said, not in Boston. They don't want 3 beds with 1 bathroom. I said, rent it as a 2-2. Take that spare room, make it a bathroom if you can. You know, if it's possible.
Yeah.
Boston's a tough zoning place, but I'm sure you could do it. Make it a 2-2. The rent's $1,000 more. As
wow.
It's $1,000 more than if it was.
That's an amazing insight.
Than if it was a 3-1.
It's very interesting because, again, you know, I think only 3. Right? If you really boil it down, maybe there's 4 things in my experience that drive rents: bedrooms, bathrooms, parking, and then a fenced backyard. Right, a place for kids or dogs or whatever. Right, that's yours. All of those can theoretically drive more rent. But you're absolutely right. When I think about a 3-1 versus a 2-2, I don't know that I would have guessed it would have been 20% higher, 25% higher. But, you know, in a market like Boston, and maybe that's like Miami and Dallas and Austin, maybe, yeah, that because, again, you're right. That second bathroom is important. It makes sense. It makes,
especially
you're right.
Especially in an area where there's a higher probability that it's 2 people that aren't married that are living together.
Right. Correct.
And, you know, if you're out in the suburbs somewhere, it's probably a family, might not have as much value. But I'll tell you, the funny part of that story is I had run those numbers in July, and the difference was 1,600 in July. Wow. Right. And I ran them today and I looked at them and I said, oh, I remember it being more dramatic. So I used our Wayback Machine,
Yeah,
but we haven't, we talked about the Wayback Machine,
I remember.
which, right? So the update on the Wayback Machine is we already have it built into the product. I just was not very quick on my feet. We
Uh-huh.
have this historical trend line on our primary report,
Okay.
and you don't have to run a report. You just go to the historical trend line,
So it's there. Okay.
hover over the point that you want. It's every quarter. So
Okay.
we go back to the beginning of 2022.
Oh
So I
wow.
hovered over July, and sure enough, the numbers were there. I was right. It was more dramatic. We're at dinner using my phone
Yeah,
and looking at it,
that's
and
great.
so I went back. I said it was more dramatic than that, and sure enough, the gap has narrowed, but it's
Hmm.
still 12,000 a year of free cash.
Yeah, yeah, $1,000 for an extra bathroom. One less adult likely living in it means it's beat up less. There's a lot of
Yes.
upside, a 2-2 versus a 3-1. That makes I'm gonna check my I don't know that I have any
So
2-2s.
look at
Yeah.
Fresno, right?
Okay.
Because I know
Yep.
that. So we talked a little bit about this before. Predominantly a two bathroom market, right? If
Right.
you buy a house,
Yeah, if you buy a
with
house for sure. Yep.
it's
Hmm.
going to have it. It's going to be a two bathroom, and so. But I did look at the two ones, right?
And there's some. Yep.
And the two twos, right? So the two twos are renting. Um, there are some. So I look at this from the opportunity side, right? And I
Right.
say, okay, if I go buy a 2-1, where was the rent for that? I believe it's 33%. It's 31% higher for a 2-1 house versus a 2-2 house. It's about
Okay.
450 dollars a month higher for 2-2 versus a 2-1. There's
Okay.
not a lot of 2-1s in the market. There's 130 rentals that I saw in the market. I
Right.
haven't looked at the for sale side, but go find some 2-1s and convert them to 2-2s.
No, that's
Buy
the
them as a,
magic. Yes,
buy them as
exactly.
a 2-1 and rent them and finance them as a 2-2.
Yeah, there's magic in that. I mean, that there's a forced value add. I mean, people have, like when the market gets crazy, you got to find ways to create value. One of the big ones I did is I found 2-1s, kind of like the 990 square feet, 2-bedroom with a den. You convert the den to a third, bingo, bango, a third. But now what you're highlighting here is that bath is even more important, right? Look
Yes.
for a way to get a second bath in there. And
Yeah.
this is great advice. Again, an extra $450. A bathroom doesn't cost a lot. You do, permits, all of that, 15, 20 grand.
Right.
That's a really good return on your money.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's a
Now there's
great
not a
insight.
lot of them. You got to work hard probably to find them because it literally is 10-1. The
Yeah. Well, the other thing, it's actually not that hard because what you'll see in Fresno, and you don't. I mean, I'm there every day. I invest there for 20 years. There's some pockets inside Fresno that are just older, right? Kind of 1950s, 1960s built. Think 93701, 93702, for example. Lots of 2-1s and lots of 3-1s. This is very
yeah.
post World War, kind of affordable housing for the vets. We got whole streets that are 2-1s and 3-1s,
Yeah.
900 square feet. And then
Yeah.
all the new stuff, there probably hasn't anything since the 80s, 1980s that wasn't at least a 2-bath. And that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
different parts of the town. So
Yeah.
yeah, if
And
you want to
that
fish,
the
yeah.
numbers bear that out, right? If you're doing a 3-bedroom, the rent difference is 592 a month. So it's even 33. It's 33. So if you find a 3-1, you add a second bath, you got another
Bingo.
almost $600 a month.
That's so valuable. And this is what Rotometer does for folks. Again, you got all the data, you got the Wayback Machine on the screen, right? Going
Yeah.
back to 2022.
Yeah.
The other thing, reason I brought up accidental landlords and why I think Rotometer is the answer for them. A lot of them didn't buy the house thinking they were going to be landlords, so they probably have no idea what things rent for and what the variables are.
Mm-hmm.
I think your solution is perfect for the accidental landlords.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and remote investors.
Yep,
If you're
for
looking to
sure.
invest out of California, you want to know
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in Indianapolis and Toledo, which
For
seem to
sure.
be very very hot markets right now. So
Yeah, very cool. Well, if somebody in my audience wanted to play with it, where do we send them?
www.rentometer.com.
Very
There's
cool,
three
Mike.
W's.
Yeah, 3 W's. Mike, you're amazing. Thanks you for what you do, and we'll catch up again.
Thank you, Michael.
You
Thank
got
you,
it.
Zuber.
There you go.